Welcome to Down to Earth Convos Down Under, episode 9. In this episode, Isabella Carter joins us to talk about learning in the real world and ways to do that whether you homeschool or not, as well as how to operate more consciously in our daily lives.
Hey there, Brad. How are you in WA?
Hey Ali, I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you over on the Sunshine Coast?
I'm super excited because we have Bella Carter joining us today, which Bella is a mutual friend of both yours and mine. And we are just delighted to have you here today, join us for a Down to Earth Convo Down Under. Would you like to introduce Bella and let our listeners know all about it?
Absolutely. So Bella is a wife and a mum of 2 teenagers, and she's really devoted the last 30 years of her life to the world of a more progressive education that is, based in the real world. So she's homeschooled her kids in a quest to help them with lifelong skills, knowing who they are, what they stand for, and how to build their life and their meaning. So now that her children have chosen school for their final years, Bella has re-entered the early years as a kindy teacher. And at that stage, she believes that children set their foundation for positive, lifelong learning and meaningful learning. So Bella's also passionate about helping parents and their children tap into what she calls the other R's to ensure that they're creating a positive and constructive learning journey. So along with the other R's, there's resilience, respect, resourcefulness, and she's adapted the slow food paradigm and merged it with slow parenting. So slow education and slow living. So ultimately, Bella lives and teaches with the mantra, good for me, good for you, good for the planet. And if you can't say yes to all three, then don't do it. So Bella, I have a question for you to start off with. Can you share with us some of your family mantras that help to keep you all inspired?
Well, first, thanks for having me, guys. It's
You're
really
so welcome.
great to be here. So what I've been able to develop through the years, and I guess this started way before I had children, was the idea of good for me, good for you, and good for the planet. Through the experience of teaching other children and then having my own, became acutely aware of the fact that rushing through the educational journey, and in fact rushing through life, has caused a great deal of stress. And when you're in stress, you stop and things go downhill. So what came to me, and this term was coined through a good friend of mine, Brendan Glanville, good for me, good for you, good for the planet. He is a parent of 4 kids, and he also has been through a similar journey of unschooling and homeschooling his children and developing a whole program around drama and teaching children good for me, good for you, good for the planet through drama. So it's his teaching that taught me how to embody good for me, good for you, good for the planet. I took that on as a family mantra. And so the whole idea of good for me, good for you, good for the planet is in any decision that you make, in even the micro moments when you're playing with a friend, or you're choosing what to eat, or you're making a huge decision about what you're going to do with your next step, investing or whatever, ask those questions. Is it good for me? Is it going to harm me? Is it going to fulfill me? Is it going to support my journey for well-being as well? Then is it good for you, the community, the local community, the global community? If your decision is going to impact negatively, and I mean, it's not so much, you can't keep everyone happy, and that's not our job to make everyone happy. It's our job to focus on our well-being so that we can help others. So it's not about that. It's more about, is it really damaging to others? So there's quite a distinction there, and I could go on, but I won't. And then, is it good for the planet? And that's an obvious one. You're not going to do anything that's going to harm the planet. So if you cannot say yes to all 3 of those things, then the answer is clear, and you don't go ahead. And then you keep asking the question, what is it that's going to support me? What is it that's going to support others incidentally through what I do? And what is it that's always going to keep the planet healthy. So that's our mantra, but underpinning that mantra are the other R's that I became aware of and I created for myself and then used in my teaching and then used in my parenting. So the other R's that I came up with, there's actually 10 of them. So we've all grown up with that idea of 3 R's in school, right? So
reading, writing, and arithmetic. That
doesn't start with
R.
R. So go figure. We're always asking that question as teachers. So they are important, but alone are not sufficient. Right.
Agreed.
So exactly. So I became aware of and developed the other R's for myself as a teacher, but incidentally, I've embodied those and now I've reached an unconscious competence in it where I'm not even consciously thinking about them, but they are underpinning all of my decisions. So what you mentioned earlier, Brad, with resourcefulness, responsiveness, I'm reading them out on my list here because there's so many of them and I wrote them such a long time ago. Respect, relevance, rejoicing, celebrating every day, being in gratitude and having moments of really being present to the micro moments that are uplifting and are joyful. Reflection, always reflecting and doing feedback loops. So I can go on about that one. Reverence, which is tuning into your intuition and prayerfulness. And resting your body every single day, including that in your way of being, which I think, let's say, let's name the elephant in the room. Our education system is broken and it's not the teacher's fault. It's not the principal's fault. It's not about a blame game, but let's name it for what it is. It's not a system that is supporting holistic learning. It's just not. So we have to take control, and that's what I've done with the other R's and being very aware of them, and then having that underpin our mantra, good for me, good for you, good for the planet. And that's helped me as a parent to navigate the world of the schooling system and our society, the rushed society, and tapping into what you mentioned earlier also, Brad, slow parenting, slow eating, slow living.
Bella, it sounds like you're talking about the lessons that kids don't learn in schools, and yet you were teaching this in schools. What was that like? How did that go?
It's very, very challenging because you are in a paradigm that's very, very committed to their way. And if it's not their way, it's the highway. However, there are schools now, there are environments now that are popping up everywhere where people have recognised the need to embody the other R's as their everyday way of being. So it was hard, Brad. And I have been through a cycle as a teacher and a parent where I left the teaching profession consciously because I felt like I was hitting my head against a brick wall. Even though I had very supportive principal at the time, it was very difficult because you're still having to report to the current curriculum, which is even more intense now than it was when I was teaching 20 years ago. But I had my baby and that was my very easy excuse to leave. And then I decided, well, my husband and I decided to homeschool our children. So for those early years and the middle years, that's what we did. And I'm not saying to parents, go homeschool your kids. It also has its challenges. So I'm not promoting that as the only way. It is but one of many ways to have a connected family life and to educate your children so that they become happy, whole, balanced adults who know who they are, what they stand for, and know how to create their own life of meaning. Not ours, but their own. So to answer your question, I found it very difficult, Brad. I left, I homeschooled my kids. They've chosen to finish their schooling in school. They're facing all of those challenges themselves, but they're aware of them. And the beauty of this now is that we've been able to instill in our kids an awareness of what to value and what to not worry about. So even in school, my kids come home and they tell me about the structures that they have to step through, and they can tell me what's worth worrying about and what's worth pouring their time and effort into. And they have our permission as parents to say, don't put any more time and effort into that particular thing or subject. But if that other subject is of great value to you and it's leading you to where you want to go, then pour your heart and soul and your commitment and your grit into that. So they're not overloading themselves and getting into a situation where they're totally burnt out and stressed, because the minute you get into that burnout phase, everything stops and you're not effective. And that's what we're trying to avoid, is them growing into adults who believe that's what life should be like as an adult. So I've kind of flipped it. It's really having an awareness of right here, right now. Let's be the example of what adulthood can look like for them. And so if we, the adults, are rushing, working our butts off, not playing, not resting, not celebrating, not being in gratitude, not taking it slow.
They're the lessons you're sending to kids.
Right, in the quest to help them be independent as adults, then what are we teaching them? We're teaching them that when you become an adult, you have to stop doing all the things you love, because you've got to work really, really hard to make the money, buy the house, go into debt, and then spend the rest of your life paying off your debt and being tied to it. So it just came as a blinding flash of the obvious to me when I was teaching children before I had my kids, that this is what we're gearing them up for. So it's like come full circle, and I really believe, well, it's in the research. It's not just my belief. It's in the research that the foundations for lifelong learning happen in the early years.
Yeah.
It's not something that can't be fixed though. So I see parents all of the time. They come to me and they say, help me. You know, my kids hate going to school. They're crying. They're holding onto my legs. They're just so stressed, and they've had that the whole way through. It can be fixed. So while I say the foundations are formed in the early years, it doesn't mean that things can't change, but it requires guidance. You don't have to do it on your own. That's the first thing. Secondly, it requires commitment, and it requires the adult to really get help in re-establishing and re-evaluating what is truly important to them.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. We've been talking about values and connecting to a child according to what's most important to them. The teachers need to connect with the child, don't they, Bella? That's wonderful. There was just so much awesome stuff. I was hanging on to every word you spoke then, Bella. Thank you. I remember a conversation that came up a few years back with you, Bella, about the pressure that the young early years, like elementary school, primary school kids were going through in their junior years. And if I recalled a conversation, well, it's not a conversation, my young son came in from primary school, came into my office, and he was so upset that he was talking like this. And I said, what's wrong? What's wrong, babe? He said, I didn't do well in my science test. And I can just tell you guys, that this pressure did not come from me, because I've raised 3 children, and my middle one was the school. Actually, I will say that all my children love school. Yeah. My middle one, I'm talking about primary school, I used to say when he was playing up, I'd say, keep it up, Sam, and you won't be going to school today. Because a part of what he loved about school was he loved his teachers, and he loved the socializing with his mates, which was fantastic. So I love to throw in a few of those positives.
Sure.
And then my little one, he was so academic, that for some reason he put pressure. I don't know where the pressure came from. Obviously, it stemmed from those early years, which is his early years of childhood, upbringing, teachers, who knows who planted this seed. But he puts enormous pressure on himself. And then later in the high school years, he got to the stage where he was diarrheaing, vomiting from the stress of exam pressure and things like that. So that was just mind-blowing for me. And I had to like pull him aside and connect with some really light healers, actually they were, to sort of rebalance him up. So we talked about balance, but yeah.
You know, ultimately the lesson in life, in education, in all that we do as humans, no matter the age, is learning that wherever you are, there you go. So it actually doesn't matter what's going on around you. What matters is how you react to it. Now, that's not something I've made up. We've all heard that. We're all hearing about that concept, but it is absolutely true. So whether your kids are in school, whether they're homeschooling, whether they're unschooling, it doesn't actually matter. What matters is in that moment, how your child's reacting is an opportunity for learning. It's about recognizing what's happening right there and then going, I'm going to learn a new way. And I'm going to, whether you leave the environment or whether you choose to stay in that environment, but deal with it in a more empowering way for yourself, that's the lesson. So my daughter's the same. She's an A-type personality. She has chosen to focus on her grades. Now, as a family, we don't focus on grades. We personally see grades as a false sense of gauging where you're at. That you get that final grade and it gives you a false idea of what you're capable of. It can give you a bit of an idea of where you are on a journey and help you decide about what your next goal might be, but it's not the be all and end all. And that's what we teach our children. So, but what we say, what we value instead is in that particular topic that you decided to commit to, how important was it for you? What value are you focusing on for this? Where do you want that to take you? Right here, right now, not what you want to be when you grow up. We don't ask that question either. We say, what interests you right here, right now? Go do that. Because every little step leads you to that awareness.
That's excellent.
Of where you're going to go as an adult.
Can I bring this back to that? I've just had like an epiphany. Rick talks to us all the time, doesn't it, Brad? we have these like one-on-one coaching sessions with our guests. Thank you. I just had like a revelation. So the reason, like when I look back, hindsight's a wonderful thing when you look back. I can see that science to this particular son was hugely important to him.
Right.
Because now the years have passed, I can see that his passion and he's hugely purpose-driven. So that's just like a little penny dropping. Maybe the pressure came from within because he was aligned and connected to his purpose and mission. Wow, that's awesome.
Right. So in the moment, recognizing that for him, it is a really powerful thing. It's like going, oh, yes, science is so important to you.
Goosebumps.
So how can we do this in a different way where you're not freaking out and you're just enjoying the journey? And yes, you're working hard and you're studying hard. That is absolutely perfect and healthy in that scenario. So I've always had this idea of let's stop looking outside of ourselves. And I can say that now because I used to. So I am by far the perfect parent. I am not the perfect parent. And I think that's another thing that we need to just get rid of is to say to parents, I know, none of us know what we're doing. And then our child grows into a new stage. Our first child, we're always first parents, right? Because our first child grows into a next phase and next phase. I don't know. I'm navigating new ground here. I don't know what I'm doing. So accepting that you don't know what you're doing is a really beautiful place to be, but not berating yourself for it and just going, oh, here's a new journey. This is exciting. I'm always learning. Learning is an exciting journey. It is not to be a scary journey. So as a parent, I've had to learn that because I used to put myself under an awful lot of pressure when my kids were little. to be the perfect parent for them. And I actually, incidentally, imposed that stress onto them, especially my first child. And he acted out because of it. So his behaviours were a reflection of the way that I was feeling about myself. But one thing that I was doing was always looking outside of myself, always looking at who can help my kid, who can teach my kid this, who can do this. Oh, they're not doing it right. So I'm now going to go and find someone else who is doing it right. And as long as you're always looking outside of yourself and not trusting yourself, you will never find the answer. You're always on that rat wheel. You're just going round and round in circles, and you're creating more and more stress, and you go faster and faster. So I learned the hard way, and I hit rock bottom as a parent. And I did have, I guess it was just not really a breakdown, but it was like this low point where I just went, oh, I just can't do this anymore. And that happened during homeschooling. That was a really tough time. And I know that there are lots of parents that are homeschooling now, especially in our area. And this is pre-COVID, actually, in our area. It's very, very popular here on the Sunshine Coast. And they go through all of that self-loathing and that pressure. So really it does start with us, the parents, to come to this beautiful slow parenting paradigm where you can just come back into your body and be present and really be aware of what you value most. And one of the things is just valuing being in the moment and stopping this idea that you have to prepare your kids for the next stage. You don't have to prepare your kids for the next stage. The minute you're thinking like that, you're stopping the learning, because right here, right now is where the learning is happening. If you can just stop, and that's where the fear comes from, and that stress is like, I've got to, they're not learning enough for the next thing. They're not developing enough for the next thing. It's not, that is actually, it's the opposite to that. If you can just come back into the here and now and be present to them and enjoy that, their learning just skyrockets. And so does yours, by the way.
And it's all vibrational to the children. If they feel that there's no pressure from the parent to perform well and bring these A's and A pluses and B's, oh my goodness. And it starts back when you reflect back to the reading. And I had the school readers when I was young. And I look back, I felt dumb and stupid going to remedial lessons, and the remedial room was where my friends were outside, they could see in because it was a window.
And that still happens now.
It's just, it's so not good.
It's not helpful at all. And it is, there's all this conversation in the education world about Australia not performing in the literacy and numeracy. And it's so counterproductive and counterintuitive what's happening in schools, because what they're actually doing in schools is what's stopping the learning. So if they just relaxed and let kids play, because we all know that kids, adults, humans learn best through play. And I'm not saying just play all day, but there has to be a long period of play every day, including for adults. And then within that day, a snippet of some structural learning where you consolidate what you've learned through the play. And for us in our culture, it's the opposite. And that's why it's not working. So if we come back to slow parenting, slow living, slow food, focus on what's good for me, what's good for you, what's good for the planet, be aware of the other R's underpinning all of that, it suddenly becomes so clear, and you can just relax and enjoy it.
And that starts with R for relax.
Yes, R for relax, rest and relax. Yes, I can add that to my list.
That's so important.
Give me a pen.
Okay,
relax.
Let's do that. I'm writing that down.
I'd like to interject there while you're writing that down. I'm totally on board with all that. And I think that for people who want to learn a bit more on the academic or research side of things, Free to Learn by Peter Gray talks a lot about play and the importance of play. And with the problem of the school system being kind of flipped on its head, the issue there, or one of the issues there, is that extrinsic motivation dominates rather than intrinsic motivation. And a great book for that is Punished by Rewards by Alfie Cohen, I think, Kohn. And he talks about it's not just in the school environment, it's in the workplace as well, that these bribes these carrot and stick methods, they produce the opposite results. And so when you give a kid a piece of paper and ask them to draw something, and you say that, you know, the best one's going to get a reward, then objectively looking at those drawings, there's less creativity and less interesting drawings, you know, using a criteria for something that is a bit subjective. But the difference is so stark that they can actually do that, that when they do the same experiment and there's no punishment, no reward, just here's a piece of paper and go for your life, they can draw amazing things. So it's one way of really illustrating that concept right there in the real world and in study.
Yeah, and so Ken Robinson is another one to follow. All of his videos.
Yeah.
He's the top TED speaker.
Yeah, top 3
Sadly,
TED
he
Talks.
passed away just recently,
Yeah.
which is really
Sad
sad
to hear that.
because I wanted to meet him.
Oh, well, we did.
And
we both did, didn't we? Yeah, we love his TED Talk. Please
so
look that up.
he's got a lot of videos for anyone who hasn't seen him. I'm sure most people have nowadays, but he's always worth mentioning for that topic. That kind of thing kills creativity. He speaks a lot on that.
Brad, we'll put that in the link, won't you, Brad? Ken
Absolutely
Robinson TED Talks.
Yeah.
Wow, Bella, I've just thoroughly enjoyed today. It's just like, wow.
It's a very worthwhile topic, I think, for all of us, because nothing works without something else. Everything's so intricately intertwined, I guess. So if we're talking about educating children, what we're really talking about is how are we living our lives. So we're bringing children into the world, into a paradigm where we're taught that it is our job to teach them. So if we're thinking it's my job to teach my child, how am I living my life? Because kids learn best through role modeling.
Yeah,
It's not what you say, it's what you do.
absolutely.
Right. So that's number one, I think. It comes back to us. It always comes back to us. How are we living our lives?
Because our kids will be a direct reflection of the parenting and the environment.
While still being who they are. And I think that's one of the hardest things for parents to accept. All of us have this idea that we either want them to be like us or we definitely don't want them to be like us.
True.
But they are born how they are in their own bodies, their own minds. And, you know, people say, my mother even says to me jokingly, and I'm very, very close with my mum, she goes, oh, I don't know where I went wrong with you. And there's another joke in the family that all my aunties say, and my mother says, I'm Grace's daughter rather, not Gina's daughter. So Gina is my mum, because I'm more like Grace in personality, in everything I do. I'm much more like Grace. I'm nothing like my mum. And everyone's just like, how can that be? But that's the point, is that our kids are not us and we are not them. And we have to stop imposing on them what we think is right for them. The best way I see to parent our kids now is to help them tap into what feels right for them.
Yeah.
Without judgment. Obviously, keep
them safe and
exactly
not doing
within the
anything
realms,
illegal.
exactly within the realms of what's good for me, what's good for you, what's good for the planet.
That's
if
the
what you're
underlying thing.
doing is not good for you, then I, as a parent, have the interest in you and the love for you to say, here's my wall of resistance. And it's a loving wall of resistance, but by golly, I'm going to resist that. You're going to come up against a nice strong wall here because I love you. So yeah, if you're going to go take drugs, I'm not going to stand by and go, oh, well, that's your choice, honey. No. If you're going to go and drink to the point of falling on the ground and being incoherent and then getting in the car, no, here's my wall of resistance again. So we're not saying just go do what you want, however you want, with whomever you want.
So we've got to keep those boundaries to guide, protect.
In that context of good for me, good for you, good for the planet.
Your mantra, your family mantra.
Yeah.
And I love the words of the late Dr. Wayne Dyer, guide and step aside.
Yeah.
And that really falls under that. Yeah, your mantra has really captured keeping our kids, they're here to protect and set boundaries. And that's beautiful.
I do have Brandon Glanville to thank for that. He and I became friends years ago when our kids were little, and he taught me that, and that was just like a light bulb going off in my head. It was just, wow.
There you go.
I've never forgotten it. I still thank him to this day. I still message, he's in Brisbane, still message him going, still using it. I still live by it. It has changed my life.
That's excellent.
That's remarkable. And I think that's a great takeaway from today's session. So I think one extension on that for my key takeaway today is, how do we achieve that? And really it's to be more conscious about what's working in our life, what's not working in our life, and why. And are these the models? Is this what I want to model for my children? And if it's not, what can I do better? What can I replace these unhealthy or hampering habits, activities, things that I'm doing to create a better life for me and a better life for my child? Ali, what would your key takeaway be today?
Well, it's hard to narrow it down to one thing because, Bella, you're such a dear friend of mine, and us three are so aligned with this real world education and tapping into a child's values, what's most important to them, being present with your child, just allowing, like stepping back and not looking for the answers on the outside, to go within and for the child to go within as well, and to be bringing them up in a world more of balance. So with your mantra, it's like I can see that that would definitely help your children live a well-balanced, healthy, happy life, fulfilling life, and always to go back within, because I'm a big fan that the answers are within. But Bella, thank you. It was just so
I just want to say one more thing. It's yes, well, many more things, but it's so easy to get overwhelmed. And I can still suffer that, right? But I have managed to deal with it in a way that's really effective. And the question that I always ask myself when I start to think, there's so much information, there's so much I can do. Okay, what's that thing I'm going to do? Is what's my next step? You just chunk it down, and that works brilliantly for everything. That one question, what's my next step? That one thing. And so what I help parents do when they call on me and they have this world of dilemma and stress is, let's come back to the basics. What's our one next step? The one next step I do with them is, let's come back to who you are, who you stand for as a parent, which is your values. Let's redefine and come to an awareness, and let's write those down, and let's just pick 3. So we list a lot of them. It's like keep going. It's like a free write where you're not thinking too much, and write all the things that you value. Now let's highlight 3 main ones that everything else falls under. It's like the umbrella of your 3 main values. Let's start from there. And when you gain clarity on that, so for me, mine is connection. So connection with self, connection with my family and my friends, and then connection with nature and the wider community. So connection is really important to me, and the village that brings up my children. Vitality, which is my well-being, my health, my rest, my playfulness, my joy, all of those things that I keep alive in my everyday micro moments. And being still, stillness, presence, slowing down, slow life, slow parenting, slow education, slow everything, right? So stillness, staring at a wall. Okay, so the next step is write down everything that you value, find 3 of the main ones, and go from there.
Beautiful. Values. Your top 3 values for you and your children, for every member of your family.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Bella.
You're welcome.
I like that. Nice and simple. Bella, where can our listeners go to find and learn more about you?
Well, at the moment, I am building something, but until then, you can go to the Barefoot and Connected Facebook page. So it's Barefoot and AND Connected Facebook page, and that's where I just incidentally write about everything that we're talking about today and share my thoughts and stories and any information that I find that supports all of that.
Brilliant. I'll put that in the notes.
And I think we might be finding Bella on future podcasts where Bella will be sharing those R's, the R's that they failed to teach in school, Yes, Bella, you got to come back.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can really flesh out each one, because each of them, it might be one word, rest, but when you unpack it, we look at examples in real time of where does rest pop up. It's not just I go to bed and rest, right? Let's think about how rest can come into an everyday situation, whether you're on the train or the bus or in a classroom, or it doesn't matter. There are opportunities for that can actually make the biggest difference in your life. So we'll unpack each of those R's.
Excellent.
In
we
detail.
Look forward to those conversations. Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. I look forward to it.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. Be sure to follow the podcast, like it, and share it. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Thanks, Brad. Bye for now.